very happy to be a Maroon.
Jamaica, or Jamaica, as it was known to the Arawak Indians. They were the first Aboriginal inhabitants on their Isle of Springs, and by all accounts lived at peace among themselves until the arrival of the Spanish fleet in 1494. The Spanish came in search of gold. They found no treasures, but instead a cheap source of labor, and the Arawaks were quickly driven into submission to work the fields and mines. The Indians fell to forced labor and were virtually exterminated. If Spain wished to hold Jamaica, she needed new slaves. Her eyes turned across the Atlantic Ocean and settled on West Africa. The first slave ships, packed with their black cargo, anchored in Jamaica in 1517, and in the following years, hundreds more sailed off from the Gold Coast, with Africans bound together in darkness and disease. Those who survived their voyage held up to their new captivity and quickly supplanted the few remaining Arawaks. However, not every ship returned to Jamaica, nor could every plantation control its enslaved. Some Africans chose open rebellion. Organized insurrections increased with time, only to be crushed again and again by the Europeans. In 1655, Jamaica was invaded by the British fleet. In the midst of the confusion, large numbers of Spanish slaves took their chances and fled into the dense interior, where they banded together for protection. Within a few years, Spain formally relinquished control of the island, and Jamaica began a new and dark chapter under English rule. Lost to the isolation of the thick and hilly Midlands, the fugitive slaves cared little. They were free men, and now concentrated on building their numbers. While below, the British colonists streamlined the patterns of slave trade already firmly entrenched. Towards the early 18th century, Jamaica began to prosper as a major sugar colony. The English king was delighted, and to encourage an even healthier plantation economy, thousands of new slaves were acquired, and new settlements flourished. The island now supported a large black population, bound under a determined white minority. Through ignorance and greed, Jamaica and slavery became one, with the slave trade ruling the fates of all parties involved. Word spread of those slaves who had escaped during the British invasion and who now roamed the interior. They became known as Maroons, from the Spanish cimarron, or unruly ones, and their bold organized raids on white settlements shocked the English and inspired other slaves to escape and join those already free in the mountains. Many early Maroons were born in Africa. They represented many differing tribes with their own cultural backgrounds and languages. There were the Ashantis and Fantis, the Aways and Gaz, the Igbos and Yorubas, and countless others between. From these individuals, a common society took root and arose in the forests to become the Maroons. The British colonial government, recognizing its growing vulnerability, organized a series of military campaigns against the Maroons, yet these almost always met with defeat. Even though the English forces greatly outnumbered the Maroons and were far better equipped, it seemed these Maroon soldiers, led by their disciplined officers, were all but invincible. The Maroons fought a guerrilla war, camouflaged in leaves and lying in ambush, and they used the abang, a horn, whose sound carried over long distances to forewarn others of the approach of enemy forces. The fighting grew, often desperate for both sides, but the Maroons simply could not be defeated, and so in 1739 the English sued for peace. The two major groups of Maroons, one to the west in the Cockpit country, and one in the eastern Blue Mountains, signed formal treaties, entitling the Maroons to full freedom and self-rule, large land grants, exemption from taxation, and peace.